I still remember the night. Mia laughed at me like it was a joke I couldn't get. I had been working on improving myself, learning new skills, reading, practicing things I never thought I could do. I thought she would notice. I thought she would care. "You actually think this will change anything?" she asked, tilting her head with that smug smile. "I just want to try," I said, clutching the notebook I'd been scribbling in for hours. "I'm trying to be better." Mia laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Better, Alex, please. You'll never be enough. Do you even know why I stay with you?" My stomach sank, and I felt my hands tremble. I thought we were growing together." "Growing?" she sneered. "You're stuck. You're always stuck. You're pathetic, trying so hard to impress me." I swallowed hard. My chest felt tight, like I was being crushed from the inside. "I just wanted you to be proud of me," I admitted, my voice shaking. "Proud?" she echoed, shaking her head. "Proud of this? Of someone who can't even stand on their own? Alex, it's laughable." I opened my mouth to argue, but no words came. Everything I'd done, every late night and every sacrifice, felt like nothing. She wasn't even looking at me anymore. She was already imagining herself somewhere better. Somewhere I couldn't reach. "Do you even realize how boring it is, watching you flail around?" she continued. "I can't take this anymore. I deserve someone who's already enough." I felt a lump in my throat. I'm trying to. Trying isn't enough." She cut me off. "You'll never be enough, ever." Her words echoed in my head long after she walked away, leaving a cold silence that pressed against my ears. I stood in the middle of my apartment, holding my notebook, staring at the wall. My heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. I sank onto the couch, dragging the notebook into my lap. The words I had written, the goals I had planned, the dreams I had whispered to myself at night, all of it seemed meaningless now. I'm not enough," I whispered to myself. I could hear the faint click of her heels as she left, and the sound seemed to mock me. My eyes blurred with frustration and pain. I had given her everything, tried so hard to grow, and all she did was crush me with one sentence. I opened the notebook, scanning the pages full of ideas, plans, and goals. Each word felt heavy, like a weight pressing down on me. I wanted to tear it all apart, to scream at the ceiling, to make the world hear my pain. Instead, I closed the notebook slowly, pressing it against my chest. I drew a shaky breath. "No," I muttered. "I won't beg for approval. Not anymore. If she can't see my worth, then I'll build it for myself." I stood, pacing the room, thinking of everything I could do differently, thinking of the life I could create without waiting for her validation. Her laughter, so cruel and sharp, became the spark that lit something inside me, a stubborn, quiet fire. "I don't need her to believe in me," I said, my voice steadier now. "I need to believe in myself." The apartment felt empty, but I felt something inside that I hadn't felt before. Resolve. Pain, yes, but also determination. I would keep learning. I would keep growing. And I would do it all without her. For the first time, I promised myself, no more waiting for someone else's approval. I would create my own worth, my own path, my own life. And if she ever came back, she would see me as someone she could no longer control. I clutched my notebook, inhaled deeply, and whispered, "I'll do this." For me, the days after Mia's words blurred together like a painting left in the rain. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and every task at work felt like dragging myself through mud. "Alex, man, you've been MIA for a week," Daniel said one afternoon, leaning against my cubicle. "What's going on? You okay?" "I'm fine," I mumbled, eyes on the screen but seeing nothing. "Fine." He raised an eyebrow. "You look like someone dumped a truck on your soul. Come on, let's hit the gym. Clear your head." "I can't," I muttered. "I have stuff to do," Daniel sighed. "Stuff? Alex, I've known you since college. You're not stuff. You're you. And right now, you're a ghost. Talk to me, please." I shook my head. I don't know what to say. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. He frowned. You've been working hard, man. All those late nights, the classes, the reading, I saw you. And now you're letting some girl undo all of that. It's not that simple, I said, my voice tighter than I realized. It's everything. She made me feel like I was nothing. Like all of this, I waved at my desk, my notes, the projects meant nothing. Daniel's expression softened. I get it, okay, but letting her words destroy you. That's not living, Alex. That's dying slowly. You're better than this. I shook my head again. I don't feel better. I don't feel anything. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a call from Dad. Alex, how are you holding up? His voice was calm, patient, a voice I hadn't wanted to hear. Fine, I said, though I wasn't. Fine. Alex, listen. I know you feel broken right now, but sometimes what feels like a loss is a blessing in disguise. A blessing. I scoffed. You call this a blessing? She humiliated me, Dad. She laughed at me. I'm useless. Alex, he said firmly. You're not useless. You're alive. You're learning. Pain doesn't destroy you unless you let it. And trust me, it will teach you more than anything else. You just don't see it yet. I hung up, staring at the wall. His words sounded hollow, like echoes in a tunnel. Maybe he was right, maybe he wasn't. I didn't know, and I didn't care. Later that night, I scrolled mindlessly through my phone. And there she was, Mia smiling, flawless, the kind of smile that had once made me dizzy. Only now, she was holding hands with someone else, her new boyfriend, at a fancy dinner. Everything she mocked me for, she was now flaunting with him. I closed my eyes and let out a bitter laugh. Of course, she's happy. Of course, she gets what I worked for and dreamed of. I felt a tightness in my chest, a mixture of anger, hurt, and something new, determination. No, I whispered to myself. I'm not doing this for her. I'm not proving her wrong. I'm doing this for me. I opened my notebook and started jotting down a plan. Not a plan to get her back, not a plan for revenge, but a plan for me. Classes, skills, projects, changes in my life. Things I could control. Things that would make me better than I ever thought I could be. Daniel's words echoed. You're alive. You're learning. Pain doesn't destroy you unless you let it. I stared at the page and nodded. One day, I'll see what I can become, and it won't be for her. It'll be for me. I closed the notebook, feeling a small flicker of fire inside. The haze was still there, the hurt was still there. But now, I had something else, a spark that whispered, you are more than her words. You are more than this heartbreak. And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. When I walked into the office that Monday, everything felt heavier than usual. The sting of Mia's words still lingered, but the spark Daniel had reminded me of pushed me forward. I needed something to hold on to, some way to prove to myself that I wasn't worthless. Alex, are you really taking on the Henderson project? A coworker asked as I passed. Everyone says it's dead. You're crazy. I know, I said, gripping my notebook a little tighter. Maybe I am. But I want to try. They shrugged, shaking their heads. I ignored them and went to my desk, spreading out plans and notes like armor. Nights blurred into mornings, fueled by black coffee and quiet determination. Hey, a voice said softly one evening. I looked up to see Sarah, one of the quieter people on our team, leaning against my desk. Mind if I sit up? Sure, I said, trying to sound normal, though my hands were still shaking from fatigue. You've been here late every night for a week, she said, pulling out her laptop. You're not planning to do this alone, right? I guess I am, I admitted, unsure why I felt vulnerable around her. I want to see if I can make it work. If I fail, well, it's still my fault. Sarah smiled faintly. You know, sometimes it helps to have someone else look at it. Fresh eyes can spot what we can't. I nodded, though part of me wanted to protest. I had always been the lone but something in her calm tone made me pause. Okay. Let's do it together then. Hours passed, filled with quiet typing, brainstorming, and her occasional suggestions. She never asked about Mia, never pried into my personal life. Just steady guidance, small but meaningful. "You're improving this section," she said, pointing at a chart. "It's subtle, but it changes the whole flow. Nice work." "Thanks," I muttered, feeling an unfamiliar warmth in my chest. I didn't think it would look like this. Not yet. "Sometimes it takes just one step forward," she said. "Keep going. Don't judge your progress by the end results yet." Her words were simple, but they cut through the fog of self-doubt. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a small smile. "Ever feel like you're stuck?" I asked quietly, not really expecting an answer. "All the time," she said, meeting my eyes. "But we keep moving anyway. Even small steps matter." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Small steps, huh? Feels like I've been crawling for years." "Then crawl," she said with a grin. "At least you're moving. That's better than standing still." I leaned back in my chair, watching the screen but feeling something shift inside me. The nights weren't as lonely when she was there, guiding me quietly. The small victories, a fixed chart, a coherent slide, a problem solved, began to pile up. Each one reminded me that I could still do something right, even if Mia had laughed at my efforts. "Alex," Sarah said, one evening, "you're getting there. Keep at it, you'll surprise yourself." I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel empty when I smiled. "Thanks, Sarah. I think I'm ready to keep trying." "For real, this time," she nodded, closing her laptop. "Good. That's all anyone can ask of themselves." Later, when the office cleared out, I stayed behind for a while, staring at the screen. The numbers looked different tonight. The plan looked different. And I felt different. I realized I didn't need someone else's approval to know my worth. Mia's laughter, her mockery, her absence, they all had fueled this moment more than anyone could know. And as I packed up to leave, I whispered to myself, one step at a time, "I can do this. I will do this." Without anyone's approval, even hers. The networking event was loud, full of chatter, clinking glasses, and the polite hum of small talk. I was there to represent our team, to meet clients, and to prove, at least to myself, that I belonged here. That's when I saw her, Mia, standing across the room, still stunning, hair perfectly styled, that confident smile plastered on her face. But something in her eyes betrayed her tension, uncertainty. Her boyfriend stood beside her, laughing and looking elsewhere, clearly ignoring her. "Alex," her voice floated over, smooth, casual, like she hadn't abandoned me months ago. I turned, fixing her with a steady gaze. "Mia, you look different," she said, stepping closer. There was a pause, an attempt at casual conversation. But I could see the flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Better," I replied, my voice calm, confident. Not smug, just unshaken. Her lips parted slightly, and for a brief moment, she looked off balance. I could almost see the calculation behind her smile, trying to read me. Trying to find the old Alex she once thought she broke. "You've changed," she said softly. I chuckled lightly, shaking my head. "I guess so. It's funny how perspective works, isn't it?" She hesitated. You're handling things well." I raised an eyebrow, tilting my head. "Things, you mean life? Work, or you?" She blinked, and I could tell she wasn't expecting the question. I mean. "Well, you've grown." "Thanks," I said, sipping my drink. I kept my tone neutral, kind, but firm. It feels good to move forward, to focus on things that matter. She smiled, but it wasn't her usual smugness. It was tentative, unsure. I noticed the way she glanced at her boyfriend, who was laughing with someone else, clearly unaware of her unease. "So, your project at work?" she asked, trying to steer the conversation towards safer territory. "It's going well," I said, shrugging. "A lot of late nights, but progress matters more than perfection." Her gaze lingered on me for a moment, then she nodded. "I always thought I don't know. You'd never what?" I asked, genuinely curious. She faltered, glancing down at her glass. Never recover. Never. Move on. I smiled softly. I did. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. Not to you. Not to anyone else. I just realized my life doesn't need your validation to be worth living. She blinked, speechless. That old confidence, the one that used to intimidate me, seemed to crack under the weight of my calm assurance. Are you happy? She finally asked. I met her gaze steadily. I am. And not because I have to be. Because I choose to be. Her eyes flicked away, toward her boyfriend again, then back to me. There was a moment of hesitation, an unspoken recognition that something had shifted. That I was no longer the person she could affect with a single word or a mocking smile. I didn't expect this, she admitted softly. That's the thing about life, I said. You never know who will surprise you, or who will surprise themselves. She gave a faint smile, and I felt no satisfaction in gloating, no rush of triumph, just calm peace. I had moved past the bitterness, past the need to prove anything to her. The rest of the night, I noticed her glances from across the room, subtle, hesitant, watching me, realizing I was no longer broken, no longer dependent on her approval. I caught a coworker's eye, exchanged a nod, and turned back to the room, confident in my own place here. She lingered in my peripheral vision, a shadow of the past, but for the first time, seeing her didn't hurt. It reminded me only of how far I had come. I smiled quietly to myself. Some lessons, I whispered, are worth learning the hard way. And for the first time, I felt satisfaction without cruelty, a quiet acknowledgement that life could move forward, and I could thrive without her. I was halfway through reviewing the latest reports when Sarah leaned over my desk, her grin wide. Alex, the Henderson project is getting noticed, she said, nudging a printout toward me. Clients love the new proposal. They're impressed. I glanced down, barely believing my eyes. Really? After all the late nights and mistakes? You've turned it around, she said simply. You really have. I mean it. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. I can't believe it myself. Feels unreal. Her smile softened. You earned it. Every hour you spent here, every small fix. It matters. I looked at her, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in months. Thanks, Sarah. I don't know what I'd have done without your help. She shrugged, brushing it off. You'd have found a way, but I'm glad I could help. Honestly, I think you're finally seeing your own worth. I nodded, letting the moment settle. Outside the office, murmurs of something else caught my attention. Rumors drifting through the company grapevine about Mia's boyfriend. Shady deals, missed deadlines, clients pulling out. Whispers that reached even my corner of the office. Wait, I said, frowning at my coffee. Did you hear what's going on with him? Sarah leaned closer, lowering her voice. Yeah. People are saying his business is falling apart. Bad press. Legal issues. You know the type, I exhaled, a strange mix of curiosity and detachment washing over me. Interesting. Not that I care, exactly, just ironic, I guess. She raised an eyebrow. I think you do, a little. You've moved on, but part of you notices the irony. That's human, I smiled faintly. Maybe, but it's not satisfaction. It's observation. Later that evening, as I left the office, my phone buzzed. A message. I froze, reading the name. Mia. My heart skipped, but not for longing, for curiosity. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, sure. Where? When we met, she looked different, humbled, unsure, her confident mask slightly cracked. Alex, she began, hesitating. I missed you. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. No, Mia. You miss who I used to be. Her eyes widened, searching my face as if trying to find traces of the old me. There was nothing to see. The pain, the desperation, the constant need for her approval, all gone. I felt a quiet satisfaction, calm and controlled. I didn't think you'd see, she started, faltering. I've changed, I said softly, shaking my head. Not because of you. Not because I wanted you back, Because I realized my life is mine. I can't live waiting for someone else to validate me. She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. I thought I mattered more. You did, I said gently. But only in the past. Now, I matter to myself, and that's enough. She glanced down at the sidewalk, quiet. I could see her trying to reconcile the confident woman she once was with the reality that I no longer relied on her presence, her opinions, her judgments. I just wanted a chance, she whispered. I know, I said. But that chance isn't mine to give anymore. I don't dwell on what was, I focus on what's next. Her eyes searched mine one last time, then drifted away. There was no anger, no bitterness, just the quiet acknowledgement of change. I watched her walk off, a subtle ache in my chest, not for her, not for us, but for the version of myself I once lost, and yet, there was pride too, a quiet, unshakable confidence. I turned back to the street, breathing in the night air. My phone buzzed again with messages about the project, new clients, and opportunities. My life was moving forward without interference, without past shadows holding me back. I smiled to myself, feeling a calm that was stronger than any rush of revenge. This, I whispered, is what moving on really feels like. I was focused on my desk when I saw her enter the office, Mia. But this time, there was no confidence in her stride, no smug smile. Her eyes were red, cheeks streaked, and her usual poise had crumbled. Alex? Her voice wavered, quiet, almost pleading. Please. I made a mistake. I looked up slowly, letting the words settle. Around us, coworkers paused mid-conversation, glancing toward the drama. Some whispered, some stared openly, but I stayed calm. Mia, I said gently, standing. Sit down. Tell me what's going on. She shook her head. I can't, I need you to understand. Everything's falling apart. Everything I thought mattered. It's gone. I studied her, measuring my response. You're talking about him, I said. Your boyfriend. The fraud, the arrests. The collapse of everything. She nodded, biting her lip. Yes. And I didn't see it coming. I thought I could. I don't know. Handle it. Handle what? I asked softly, keeping my voice steady. The choices you made, or the consequences of ignoring others while chasing your own pride. Tears welled in her eyes. Alex, I held up a hand, letting her pause. Mia, I'm not here to judge, I just want to understand why you're here. Why now? She hesitated, voice trembling. I mocked you. I laughed at your efforts to change, to grow, and now, I see that you see that you underestimated me. I said, my tone calm, not angry. That's clear. Yes. Alexa, please. I need a chance to explain. To make it right, I was wrong. I nodded slowly, thinking. Part of me wanted to say something sharp, something to make her feel the weight of her past cruelty. But another part, the part that had grown over months of work, late nights, and self-reflection, urged patience. I walked her outside. The air was crisp, the office a distant hum behind us. She followed silently, almost afraid to look at me. You mocked my efforts to change, I said quietly, looking ahead. You laughed at my mistakes, at my struggles. And you thought it would keep me small? Her breath hitched. Alex, but here I am, I continued, keeping my voice steady. I changed. I grew. I built a life, a career, a sense of self, all without your approval, without your interference. She froze, eyes wide. I didn't realize. I turned slightly, meeting her gaze. I know you didn't, that's the difference. You saw me as someone who needed validation. I saw myself as someone who needed growth. And now, I'm free. Thank you, Mia. Thank you for letting me do it without you. Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came. Her shocked expression said everything. Regret, disbelief, maybe even shame. I exhaled, feeling a lightness I hadn't felt in years. The tightness in my chest eased. I realized closure isn't about revenge. It isn't about making someone suffer. Closure comes from recognizing your own growth, your own strength. Watching her face, knowing I no longer depended on her approval, was more powerful than any words could convey. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Then don't," I replied softly. "Just remember this moment. Let it teach you, as it taught me, change, growth, and understanding your own worth can't be given or taken by anyone else." She nodded slowly, a tear falling. Without another word, she turned and walked away, shoulders slumped. I watched her go, but I didn't feel triumph or satisfaction. Just peace. I turned back toward the office, the city lights reflecting on the glass buildings. I had faced the person who once defined my pain and emerged unshaken. I had grown, changed, and found my own strength. And that, I realized, was the ultimate freedom. I arrived at the office that morning with a sense of calm I hadn't known in years. The usual chaos of emails, calls, and deadlines felt smaller somehow, manageable. I smiled faintly as Sarah waved from across the room. "Morning, Alex," she said, handing me a coffee. "Late night again?" "Just tying up some loose ends," I replied, taking the cup. "Feels good to see some results finally." She leaned against the desk, grinning. "I knew you'd get here. It was only a matter of time. You've grown more in the past months than most people do in years." I chuckled quietly, shaking my head. "Thanks, Sarah. Honestly, I never thought I'd feel this. Free from the past. I mean," she smiled softly. "It's nice to see you like this, really." We spent the morning reviewing projects, and for the first time in a long while, the conversation wasn't just about work. "You know," I said during a quiet moment, "I've been thinking about all those times I doubted myself. About her, about my failures, and how much I let it control me." She looked at me thoughtfully. "Pain doesn't make you weak, Alex. It makes you human. You learned from it. That's what matters." I stared at her, feeling the weight of her words sink in. "I wish I'd realized that sooner," I admitted. "I wasted so much energy trying to prove myself to someone who didn't care, and now?" She asked softly. "Now? I focus on me. On growth. On living without fear of judgment," I said. "And I've realized that thriving is the best revenge. Not destroying anyone. Just living well enough that the people who mocked you can't touch your peace." She smiled, a warm, encouraging smile. "Exactly. And you're showing it? You're inspiring others to, I nodded slowly. I started mentoring a few colleagues who are struggling. Some face betrayal, others self-doubt. I try to share what I've learned, how to rebuild, how to trust yourself again." "That's amazing," Sarah said quietly. "You're helping people while healing yourself. That's rare." I looked down at my hands, feeling a quiet pride. It feels right. I thought revenge meant making them pay, but the truth is, living well, becoming untouchable, that's more satisfying than anything else I could do. Later that week, we grabbed lunch together. Sarah talked about her own challenges, and I shared more of my past, the mocking, the heartbreak, the months of emptiness. I expected her to pull back, but instead, she listened with patience. "You've endured so much, Alex," she said gently, "and you still care about others. That's admirable. Most people would become bitter. You didn't." I smiled softly, a real smile this time. "It wasn't easy. Some days, I still feel the echo of what happened, but I've learned that it doesn't control me anymore. It's a lesson, not a prison." She reached out, lightly touching my arm. "You're stronger than you know. And you're finally letting yourself be happy?" I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't thought possible. "Thanks, Sarah, for being here, for showing me that life can be more than proving myself to someone else." She laughed softly. "I didn't do much. You did all the work. You just needed someone to remind you that it was possible." I leaned back, watching the sunlight filter through the windows. For the first time in a long time, I felt unburdened. The past, the mocking, the heartbreak, it was all behind me. What mattered now was growth, healing, and living a life I could be proud of. "And, I said, looking at Sarah, "I think this is what real freedom feels like. Not revenge, not proving anyone wrong. Just peace. And finally, I feel it." She smiled, And I realized then that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving, and nothing could take that away. The email arrived on a quiet Thursday afternoon. I hesitated before opening it, seeing Mia's name in the sender line. My heart skipped a beat, not with longing, but with curiosity. I clicked it open. Alex, I know I hurt you. I was wrong. I miss us. Can we talk? I read it again and again. And still, I felt nothing. No ache, no anger, no spark of the old obsession. Just calm. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the city outside my window. Then deleted the message. Done, I muttered to myself. Sarah, who was working across from me, glanced up. Everything okay? I smiled. A quiet one. Yeah, just an old ghost trying to haunt me. But I'm not her anymore. She raised an eyebrow, half amused. Not her anymore. Sounds like you've finally healed. I think I have, I said, taking a sip of coffee. Years of chasing approval, of trying to prove myself to the wrong person. Gone. It doesn't control me anymore. Sarah nodded. Good, you deserve that. You worked hard to get here. I leaned back, feeling the weight of the past finally lift. It's strange, I said softly, how losing her was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. I thought I was broken, but it turned out I just needed to rebuild. You rebuilt yourself beautifully, she said, smiling, and you're still helping others along the way. I nodded. Mentoring the younger team members has been enlightening. Watching them grow, reminding them to trust themselves, it reminds me of how far I've come. And I enjoy it more than I ever enjoyed anyone's approval. Sarah laughed. See, that's freedom. Real freedom. I'm finally living my life for me, I admitted. Not for her, not for anyone else. Just me, and it feels right. The company had grown steadily, recognition coming for projects I'd poured myself into. Success no longer felt hollow, it felt earned, and the quiet satisfaction that came with it was far sweeter than any applause she could have given. Do you ever think about her? Sarah asked one evening as we watched the sunset from the office terrace. I smiled, watching the colors stretch across the sky. Only to thank her, I said. She forced me to stop depending on someone else for validation. She pushed me to find myself. Without her, I might never have realized my own strength. She laughed softly. That's a mature way to look at it. I had to, I said. Holding on to resentment would have only chained me to the past. I refuse to live like that. Peace is more important than pride, revenge, or even closure from someone who couldn't value me. Sarah reached out, touching my arm lightly. And you found it? I see it in you every day. I nodded, feeling warmth, but not dependence. Yes, peace. That's what love should ultimately feel like, not promises, not drama, not control. Just calm, joy, and trust in yourself. And what about us? She asked quietly, a slight teasing tone in her voice. I looked at her, genuine, unguarded. We take it slow, carefully. I've learned patience, and that happiness doesn't need to be rushed. We grow together at our own pace. No pressure. No expectations. She smiled, her eyes softening. I like that. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I like it too. For the first time, I feel free from the past, from toxic attachments, and from the need to prove myself to anyone but myself. She nodded. You're finally living, Alex. And it shows. Yes, I said quietly, watching the sky deepen into evening. I'm finally living, fully and peacefully. As I sat there, the last traces of old pain fading, I understood that life's greatest victories often come quietly. The storms we survive shape us more than any fleeting romance or approval ever could. And for the first time, I felt unshakable, content, and free. That the invitation arrived in the mail, crisp and official. A charity gala hosted by Mia's former company, now under new management. I paused, considering whether to attend. Curiosity won over hesitation. I wanted to see how life moved on without lingering shadows. The evening was bright with chandeliers and polite chatter. Colleagues mingled, discussing donations, projects, and future collaborations. I wandered through the room, offering smiles and handshakes, and then I saw her, Mia, humble, quiet, dressed simply, no glamour to hide behind. She glanced up as I walked past, and our eyes met. I stopped briefly, letting the moment stretch, noticing the subtle tension in her posture. Her boyfriend wasn't in sight, and the confidence she once flaunted seemed replaced with a careful humility. She took a small step toward me, hesitating. "Alex." Her voice was soft, almost fragile. I smiled warmly, genuinely. "Hello, Mia." Her eyes flicked down, then back to mine, searching. You really did change." I chuckled quietly. "You helped me do it?" Her lips parted slightly in a smile, one without pride or arrogance, just recognition. It was brief, but it carried weight. She understood, without words, that I had moved beyond her influence. That I was no longer tethered to the pain she once caused. "You look happy," she murmured. I nodded, taking a breath that felt lighter than anything I'd felt in years. "Really happy." Her gaze lingered for a moment, and then she stepped back, letting me continue through the crowd. I felt no tension, no need to prove anything. The bitterness had dissolved into calm. Across the room, Sarah waved from a distance. I moved toward her, feeling a surge of gratitude for the people who had truly mattered, those who built me up, rather than tearing me down. Mia's soft voice followed me. "I guess I underestimated you." I didn't turn immediately. I let her words settle. Then I nodded gently. "Maybe, but that's the past. We all learn, eventually." She seemed to consider my words, nodding subtly. "Yes, I can see that now." I walked away fully, feeling the liberation in each step. Behind me, the faint sound of her breathing seemed to echo relief, not from me, but from herself. Later, during a quiet pause in the evening, Sarah leaned close. "Did that feel freeing?" I smiled, watching the light play off the crystal glasses around us. "More than anything, the past has no grip on me anymore. Not MIA, not old regrets, nothing. I'm finally just here, present, free." She grinned. "It suits you." I looked around the gala, observing people laughing, conversing, and working for a cause. Life had moved forward, and so had I. It wasn't about revenge, nor did I need validation from her acknowledgement. My contentment came from within. Mia watched from a distance, and I saw no longing, only reflection. That was enough for me. She had her life to live, and I had mine, completely separate, yet peacefully intersecting for a brief moment. I turned to Sarah again. I used to think that seeing her humbled or regretful would make me feel justified. Now I know. True peace isn't about them. It's about me. Sarah squeezed my shoulder gently. "You've earned it." I nodded. "I have. And for the first time in a long time, I feel fully in control of my happiness. I'm building it on my own terms, with the right people around me. No one from my past can shake that anymore." Mia glanced one last time, our eyes meeting briefly. No envy, no tension, just mutual recognition. And in that look, I found the final affirmation I didn't need her approval to feel. I was free. Truly free. I stepped away, into the light of the room. Smiling for myself, the city stretched beneath us as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The rooftop was quiet, just Sarah and me, the hum of distant traffic and the occasional honk far below. I leaned back on my elbows, letting the warmth of the fading sun wash over me. "You ever think about her?" Sarah asked, her voice soft, curious. I glanced at her, then at the skyline. "Sometimes. Do you regret anything?" She pressed. I shook my head, smiling faintly. "Only to thank her." She blinked, slightly puzzled. "Thank her?" "Yes." I exhaled, feeling the weight of years lift. All the pain, the mockery, the rejection. It forced me to change, to rebuild, to become someone I'd be proud of, even if she never noticed. Sarah tilted her head, studying me. "So, it wasn't wasted, then?" "Not at all," I said. "It was the push I didn't know I needed." I laughed quietly. "Funny, isn't it? The person who tried to break me ended up shaping me more than anyone else ever could." She reached over, touching my hand lightly. You've grown so much, Alex, and you did it without her, completely on your own. I nodded, letting her words sink in. Exactly. I realized that looking for validation from someone else was never the answer. Happiness, real happiness, comes from within. Sarah smiled, warmth radiating in her eyes. And now you can finally enjoy it, without the shadows of the past looming over you. Yes, I said, letting the breeze ruffle my hair. I don't carry bitterness anymore. I don't crave revenge, or closure, or even recognition from her. I have everything I need right here, right now. She laughed softly. Look at you, all philosophical on a rooftop. I chuckled, leaning back. Maybe, but it's true. Losing her, facing those years of mockery, all of it. It became my reason to fight, to improve, to really live, and I did. I'm still me, but stronger, wiser, and unshakable. Sarah's gaze softened. You've learned that freedom isn't about leaving people behind. It's about leaving your old self behind. I smiled, the last traces of tension in my chest dissolving. Yes, the old me would have begged for love or approval. The old me would have let anger control me. Now, I decide my own worth. I build my own happiness. She nodded, squeezing my hand. And I'm glad I get to be part of that journey with you. I'm glad too, I said. There was comfort in her presence, a sense of partnership without pressure or expectation. You remind me that life isn't just about proving myself to others. It's about choosing the right people to grow with. The sun slipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. I inhaled deeply, letting the colors sink into my soul. Do you know what I finally understand? I asked softly. What? That betrayal doesn't have to break you. Sometimes, it's the catalyst for rebirth. The lesson isn't in hurting, it's in learning, transforming, and finding your peace. All I needed was to stop clinging to what wasn't meant for me. Sarah smiled knowingly. And now, you're free. I nodded, watching the sun disappear completely. Yes, she mocked my efforts to change. And yet, I changed my life without her. Truly without her. I built a world where her opinion doesn't matter. And for the first time, I feel complete, free. A quiet silence settled between us, comforting and full of understanding. No lingering shadows, no regrets. Just the calm certainty of growth and inner peace. I leaned back, letting the wind carry away the last fragments of the old me. It's amazing, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. How losing the wrong person can help you find the right version of yourself. Sarah laughed softly, a warm sound blending with the evening breeze. And now, your life belongs to you. Yes, I said, closing my eyes briefly, smiling. Completely mine. And I wouldn't change a single step that led me here. Freedom isn't a gift from anyone, it's what you create for yourself. The city lights flickered on, one by one, but I didn't feel the darkness anymore. I felt alive, whole, free.